We begin with the party of science running into a bit of a brick wall, Buck Sexton. The party of science that has been arguing for 2 years now, basically. You have to wear a mask. You have to socially distance. Your kids can't be in school, or they can be in school, but they have to have masks on. All these different moving parts, which are unsupported by science at all, I feel like they came to a head in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings late last night when Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, who, by the way, is scheduled to join us tomorrow on the program, asked what would be a fairly simple question, considering we have one of the great esteemed legal minds of our generation, according to Democrats, poised to join the Supreme Court. Senator Marsha Blackburn asked Ketanji Brown Jackson a simple question. She said, "What is a woman?" And this is what it sounded like.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
I'm not a biologist is going to become a famous line, I think, because I think most kids out there, if they were in kindergarten, can you tell me the difference between a boy and a girl? Probably have that nailed down a little bit, even by kindergarten. I'm not a biologist is an all-time line.
It's amazing, Clay, because I've actually heard this. This is what the activists expect, and there's multiple levels here. And just in one moment, you see so much of what the Marxists in our midst have become. Here's the thing: if she were to define it, right, which you or I could sit here and do, everyone listening knows, yeah, a woman, a female human being, right, with female human parts. And you could get into more specifics if you want. If they define it, well, then they're actually excluding some people from the definition. So they won't actually give you a definition.
And by some people, you mean transgender.
Correct.
People.
Exactly.
Yes.
And if they defined it in such a way that it was broad enough to include transgender individuals, a lot of the country would say, wait, hold on a second. So now a woman is officially a person who psychologically and emotionally identifies as female. What are the parameters for that identity? Does there have to be a physical transition? Is it just how quickly can this happen? And it all falls apart. So they can't actually give you the definition that they would want to have because there is no definition that's acceptable to them. And then I think beyond that, so she did exactly what the left expects. She knows that she would have upset the activist Democrat left if she had said a woman is a biological female or, a anatomically female human being. So they also expect you to say things, and this is part of the fealty to wokeness. You have to say things that you know to be untrue and to make you sound dumber than you are as part of what it means to be woke. You have to be willing to do that. It's a form of, intellectual self-negation. You have to bend the knee and say, yeah, sure, I don't know what a woman is because I'm woke. That's where it is now. If you're going to be in, at that elite level for the left.
And she was prepared for this question, Buck, which is what you're hinting at, because I've heard Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire ask this question a lot. This is a question that Democratic activists don't really have an answer for. Anybody with a rational, functional brain knows how to define the difference between a man and a woman, but we are talking about someone who, by the way, is being held as the first black female nominee for the Supreme Court, yet doesn't even herself feel comfortable to acknowledge what a woman actually is. And so there are major issues now being raised about Ketanji Brown Jackson as these questions are going on. Now, it's not going to change the outcome because I don't think it's very likely that a Democrat is going to bail on her. I think Joe Manchin is there to vote for her. I think Kyrsten Sinema, the people who have been willing to bail on some of the Biden agenda. I don't think they're going to bail here. So at worst case scenario, we're looking at 50-50 with Kamala Harris able to break the tie. This is one bad answer, Buck. Do you agree, by the way, that the Democrats are going to stay solid here and there's no way they're bailing?
I'm just wondering. I told a friend of mine who's a very solid legal scholar on the right, just in passing, I said I thought it would be 5. He thinks it'll be 2 or 3 Republican votes but there's going to be a couple. I mean, you already know who some of them are. So she will get through most likely with a handful of Republican votes. I think it's going to be 4 or 5. but it'll at least be a couple of them. And there's another level, just Clay, in the response. Yeah, Democrats
Yes.
are absolutely going to keep a unified. Can you imagine if you're a Democrat, you're going to be running in a primary at any point, and you voted against the first?
Well, I think it might actually help Joe Manchin if he wanted to run in 2024.
I wasn't thinking about
Manchin.
I wasn't thinking about
He's the
Manchin,
only
but-
guy, right? Because his state is the most Trump state in the entire United States. So if he's going to run in 2 years, he might be the only Democrat that would legitimately benefit
He's
from
like kind of a Republican, but that's a fair
Yes.
point. I was thinking about
He
the
sat
other
with
the
the Republicans
mainstream,
at the State of the Union address, which didn't get
Yeah.
as much attention as I thought it might.
But I mean, even Kirsten Sinema 100% is going to vote for. By the way, are people calling her KBJ? You know, there's Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
Yeah.
RBG. I think we're starting to see, right? KBJ will be, because remember
Yes.
there was a cult built around Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, no doubt.
People were worshiping. She was, rest in peace. She was a little geriatric old woman, and people were worshiping her workout routines. Do you remember that? There were
I do.
videos
Yeah.
of how hardcore she is with the kettlebells, and I was like, you people that are pushing this at CNN are weird. Like there's something wrong with you. But anyway. The other part of the answer, though, the biology answer, I think this ties into, because I know Fauci is back, and it's good for us in the sense that at least Voldemort has returned because he's the absolute worst. But Clay, I'm not a biologist, so I can't give you an answer. This is something that we have to look at more, because this was the same thing they said about masks and about, oh, you're not an epidemiologist. You're not an epidemiologist,
Yeah.
so I can't know that it's moronic to have children who are the least at risk from COVID masking in school all day, and then have adults all around them all day long living their lives entirely normally in bars and restaurants, everywhere else. I can't know that when they tell me that I need to mask up more quickly when I'm eating I guess it's not peanuts anymore because of the allergies, but
Snack pack, yeah.
Whatever my little snack pack.
mix.
There's the little spreadable cheese. That's good. I can eat the spreadable cheese, not the crackers. So when they tell you to mask up more quickly, I'd say, well, this is moronic. So you're not an epidemiologist. The appeal to expertise as a means of shutting down rationality, reason, and debate is a favorite tactic of leftists, as you know, all the time.
Yeah, but here's the thing, too, Buck. I'm not a biologist, and I know the difference between a cat and a dog.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, the basic analysis of male and female is not really that difficult. I also loved, by the way, this is the bigger issue. Her judgment. I got to give credit to Senator Josh Hawley asking questions that I thought were pretty significant, going directly to her role as a judge. In particular, he grilled her about the child porn sentencing. She has been incredibly lenient on child pornography defendants who came before her. Listen to Josh Hawley as he breaks down some of these sentences that she gave. This is cut 4.
We're talking about 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds. He's got images of these. The government said added up to over 600 images, gobs of video footage of these children. But you say this does not signal a heinous or egregious child pornography offense. Help me understand that. What word would you use if it's not heinous or egregious?
It is heinous. It is egregious. What a judge has to do is determine how to sentence defendants proportionately consistent with the elements that the statutes include, with the requirements that Congress has set forward.
I mean, that's what other answer is she going to give there? But I mean, I saw Clay in one of the cases. They've actually gone in one of the I think the guideline, the sentencing guideline was 8. I think it was 8 years as a statutory offense. 2 or 4 was what the federal prosecutors asked for. That's one I might be forgetting. And she gave him 3 months.
Yeah. And she also argued as a part of that, and maybe we can have a discussion about this too. She said, well, a lot of these child pornography guidelines were based on photos when it wasn't as easy to distribute on the internet. So we don't need to be as egregious or as severe in our sentencing. I'm like, wait a minute. The internet making child pornography easier to distribute, to me, leans in favor of punishing child pornographers even more, because they're able to take video and photos and share them more widely than ever before. And the other thing she did was one of these defendants was 18 years old, and she said, well, he wasn't that much different in age than the people involved. The kids were 8. So for everybody out there who is thinking, I mean, the difference between an 18-year-old who is a full-grown functional adult and an 8-year-old who's in 3rd grade is pretty massive. The difference in age might be only 10 years, but we're not talking about the difference in age between an 80 and a 90-year-old or between a 40 and a 50-year-old. We're talking about legitimate young children and people who are functional adults. And so if you're going to be leaning in favor of child pornographers in terms of leniency, that's directly to your judgment as a sitting judge. And does that sound like somebody of great legal scholarship or someone of great moral clarity and authority that you want to have one of the 9 seats on the highest court in the land? I am increasingly of the opinion that while she is certainly able to be nominated, I don't know why any Democrat would vote in favor, why any Republican would vote in favor of her at all. I just so you can get a little bit of a nice thing written about you in the New York Times because you're the
maybe we can invite Mitt
senator.
Romney on when he votes for her. I'd be like, hey, Mitt, why don't you explain
I would love
what
to
the
get Mitt
thinking
Romney
was?
on because I'd like for him to explain why he voted in favor of the mask mandate continuing. And by the way, there's some weird decisions being made by Utah Republicans. I'm not in favor. Did you see their governor?
Yes,
vetoed
horrible
the transgender
on the transgender
bill?
issue. Another
What in the
instance.
world's he doing?
This is cowardice in the face of corporate pressure. These governors who will not sign bills to protect women's sports in their states are bending the knee to corporations and corporate money for their campaigns and corporate money that will be waiting for them as consultants and board members and things like that afterwards. In state after state, this is the reality where it happens. Look at Governor DeSantis in Florida, who says, we're going to stand with women's sports. We're actually going to celebrate the best NCAA female swimmer in the country. And look at other states where all of a sudden they sign this, oh, no, we can't do that.
Indiana, too. I believe it's Indiana and Utah, both Republican governors. Now, they're talking about the state legislatures coming back and vetoing, overriding the veto. But that's disgraceful.
And don't listen to anybody who says, but I'll sign an executive order as governor that will deal with this just as well. Really? Well, then why didn't you sign the legislation? Please.
Some of them are saying, well, this is not a big deal yet. Were you going to change the legislation when it becomes a big deal, when the girls start losing all of their matches to biological men? No, you address this before it becomes the issue. It's clear that it's coming.
Look, we want the right. We are conservatives here. We want conservatives to win, but we also got anybody who's got a GOP, who's got an R next to their name. There's got to be accountability sometimes too, folks. So that will be happening between now and Election Day as well. There's some good legal analysis out there right now about the KBJ hearings, and there are some not so good legal analysts on the scene too, as you know. And if you're looking for the latter, I mean, if you really want some of the most either obsequious or absurd legal analysis
obsequious,
possible.
First of all. Wow, look at you.
Dropping it early today.
I know.
I wanted to get in. I had a tweet about how I may not be an ichthyologist, but I know what a fish is. Most people were like, oh, ichthyologist, good word. So just saying. One who studies bony fish, not mammalian aquatic creatures. See? Definitions. Anyway, if you want that stuff, you go over to CNN and you get it. I had to say this was particularly good. None other, who other than Don Lemon weighing in on the hearings for Supreme Court seat. Here he is.
Asking the potential jurist the definition of a woman and talking about critical race theory. It is become the new buzz term like Acorn did or Antifa and on and on and on. It's really, it's amazing to watch someone who is quite frankly, an intellectual giant be questioned by people who have really no idea about the law and what judges actually do.
I'm just going to throw this out. I'd be like, Ted Cruz, for example, Senator Cruz was asking questions yesterday. Kind of went to Harvard Law School, too, and also has argued a bunch of cases in front of the Supreme Court. So I think he knows something about the law, Mr. Lemon.
Yeah, and also, look, the idea that somebody's such an intellectual giant that they can't be questioned, by someone else. I believe almost everybody on the Senate Judiciary Committee is a lawyer. I mean, I think that's why they're on the Senate Judiciary Committee. I know not every single person is necessarily a lawyer, but a lot of those people have very substantial legal backgrounds and are every bit as accomplished as Ketanji Brown Jackson, right? Like this idea that there are 9 attorneys who are capable, 9 judges who are capable of sitting on the Supreme Court, and that they are of a different intellectual level than everybody else who are lawyers in the country is just frankly not true. Now, do we hope that the Supreme Court justices are legal heavyweights? Yes, that's what you'd want because there's only 9 seats, lifetime tenure on the Supreme Court. But it's a ridiculous proposition from Don Lemon to act like anyone is above being questioned about getting lifetime tenure to sit on the Supreme Court, much more so even when I would feel very confident that many members of the Senate Judiciary Committee are certainly the legal equals of KBG.
To be fair, when you're Don Lemon, a lot of people seem like intellectual giants.
Well, that certainly is true. But, I mean, is Don Lemon even smart enough to judge whether someone is an intellectual giant or not? I'm not even sure that I trust his ability to even tell me who a smart person is.
The reality is Joe Biden did what Ronald Reagan did by saying, hey, look, we have been excluding large percentages of our population, if not the majority of our population. It's about time we reach deep into the well of quality and genius and talent and credentials for a black woman and show America that she is like Jackie Robinson was, somebody that was probably overqualified to be in the National Baseball League, but came forward and showed us what the full talent and array of American potential is.
That was Cory Booker on Ketanji Brown Jackson. Judge Jackson, that she is like Jackie Robinson. He says Democrats are very excited about this nomination. I do think it's interesting that there are some who are still complaining about the treatment of KBJ.
Of course.
I got to say, I remember, it was visceral. I remember the Kavanaugh hearings. It was, I think, the ugliest political thing that I can remember seeing televised. I can't think of a time when Democrats were, and I said after, Democrats were being more disgraceful in terms of the Senate, and people are probably yelling, oh, but what about this thing? Yeah, I know they do a lot of bad things. But they had a guy, Clay, that was as squeaky clean a background as you're going to get, right? I mean, a guy who there was no oppo on him, there's nothing, eminently qualified, brilliant, had advanced women actually professionally all throughout his career. Which they all,
decades of written opinions that you could review.
They were willing, and when I say they, I want to remind everybody, it was Cory Booker. It was
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris. It was, go down the list of different Democrats on the Judiciary Committee. They were willing to pretend in front of, I think, like 15 million people actually watched that.
It was riveting television.
It became riveting television. They were willing to pretend that he was a serial gang rapist on the absurd word of not one, but 3 either crazy or very politically motivated individuals or a combination thereof. The second woman, people always forget this. The third was Julie Swetnick. The first was
Christine Blasey Ford.
The second was, I forget her name off the top of my head right now, but she had to spend a week speaking to her therapist and a lawyer about whether or not he exposed himself by,
Oh, that was the Yale. That
hitting
was the Yale
her
story,
with
right?
his,
Yes.
he's a man, and the man part. So this was absurd. And what they didn't tell people were how many individuals came forward, Clay, with wild accusations of rape against Kavanaugh. They hid that from the public because it would have been too obvious. Oh, he raped me on a boat in Rhode Island. He had never actually been to Rhode Island. Oh, and they're going to complain about the truth because they're asking real questions about judicial philosophy. It just goes to show you. I mean, the Democrats, shameless, utterly shameless against Kavanaugh. And now when they're, why are you being so mean to our nominee?
Buck, they were going line by line on high school yearbook superlatives and grilling him on them.
They asked him what bloofing meant.
Yeah.
And he had to say flatulence in front of Senate Judiciary Democrats because they're lunatics.
I mean, whoever you are, the idea that a couple of things. One, your high school yearbook, that they are going to go line by line grilling you on, it's like 25 years later from a high school yearbook. Two, that you would be being grilled about a high school party, which, by the way, it doesn't sound like Ford and Kavanaugh based on all the evidence. I'd encourage you to read the great book by Molly Hemingway. She dove into all the details.
Justice on Trial.
There it is, Justice on Trial. It's so good. If you were as fired up as Buck and I were about the Senate Judiciary Committee hearings, and honestly, Democrats, I think, dealt with fallout so significant from those hearings that they're just pretending they never happened. That's the other way that you know that there is a major issue for Democrats. They just pretend it doesn't exist, right? That's the way they're handling the Penn transgender swimmer issue. Most left-wingers just pretend it doesn't exist. And the same way many of the Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee are bringing up the precedent that was set with the Kavanaugh hearings. And the Democrats, Dick Durbin, just keeps saying, well, I mean, that's in the past. We don't want to talk about that anymore. But, I mean, it cost them likely a couple of Senate seats. And if things hadn't fallen apart in Georgia, I really do wonder what the situation would be if Republicans had one more Senate seat right now. Well, what would we be dealing with? Because we talked about, Buck, the mess that Georgia was losing both of those Senate seats in that
2020
election.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, in
that was a
2020,
huge
in the
missed
redo,
opportunity.
right? Because Purdue won, but didn't have a high enough percentage, so they had to redo both of them and the runoffs. And so what would be happening, I think, is an easy and interesting question to ask. I don't know that there's an easy answer if Republicans had control of the Senate right now.
Who do you think, what GOP votes does she get for confirmation? I think Romney. I think Sass. I think anyone else come to, I mean, I'd have to look at the list.
I don't think Lindsey Graham is going to vote for her, and he voted for her before, when she was going on to the D.C. circuit, so I think he's off the list. I think Romney will, because I'm not sure Romney's a Republican anymore. I mean, he's lost his mind. And I'm still fired up about the fact that he voted in favor of masks and said he wants to rely on experts.
I will never forgive that, by the way.
How can he say that after 2 years of experts being wrong about everything relating to COVID?
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
Thank you for reminding me, by the way, of why I think he's among the worst in the GOP.
So I think it might just be Romney.